So with the new Ted movie on or series on the way, been talking the Ted movies. Next week, I'm gonna talk about a surprise movie, but today we're capping off that series with the sequel to Ted, Ted Two, which I actually really like this movie. Which I didn't expect to say because I feel like with comedy sequels, a lot of people shit on them because a lot of them aren't very good. And so it's rightfully so that they do shit on them, but there's a few of them that are actually good, and I feel like this one is one that gets crapped on a lot, kind of unfairly. Because what I like about this movie is this movie more than the first. The first movie's kind of standardly directed and put together. Seth MacFarlane was trying some stuff, but not as much as this movie. Where this movie, there's a lot more dynamic camera angles. There's a great transition with them with the a puff of smoke that was really cool and very memorable to me. There's like a cool dance sequence that opens this movie. Like there's clearly a lot of stuff Seth MacFarlane didn't really need to do, but he was doing it and he was trying it, and I appreciate that. Also, I think this movie has a better through line. The actual story about Ted, at first wanting to have a baby, but then realizing, hey, society doesn't see him as a person, and so they want to take away his rights, and so he wants to, go through all that, and so he goes to court and all this stuff. It's a Family Guy episode that I think Brian went through, but it's treated a lot better here and makes for a better through line of an actual movie than a Family Guy episode. There's also just a lot of great gags of like the bits where they're trying to get the sperm and things like that. There's a lot of great stuff like that. I like all that stuff, but I think that's great. Where this movie falters a little bit for me is there is a little bit too reuse stuff. Like we have the climax of the one guy coming back. See, it would have just been better if it was just a Hasbro CEO trying to get Ted to figure out what makes him alive and makes him tick. I feel like that's a great through line. I don't know why we needed the villain from the first movie to come back, other than they were just bringing back stuff. And I do think the love interest in this movie from Mark Wahlberg's character, I actually buy their chemistry a lot more than Mila Kunis. And so that worked a lot better for me. And so some people really hate that Mila Kunis wasn't in this movie because it was just like, it's just kind of like baffling that they're like, oh yeah, they got divorced off screen. I'm like, I think it was fine because I never bought Mark Wahlberg and her chemistry in the first movie, so this means it made for a way more solid sequel to me than I think it had any right to be. I think this movie gets crapped on a lot unfairly. I think this is pretty much a very good sequel to the first movie, and I think it's better than the first movie. I think maybe the first movie has a bit more laughs, but in terms of the actual story and how it's structured and the actual camera angles and cinematography and all that stuff put together in this movie, it just works so much better, and I actually really enjoyed it. Did not expect to say that. I do think that the last thing I want to say is the ending goes on too long. Like, why is the conflict of the movie is resolved and then Mark Wahlberg gets knocked unconscious? It's like, what are we doing? Just turn it off. I don't know. I feel like both of these 10 movies could be about 15 minutes shorter, but it's whatever.